All right, I'm back. They let me come back after the last one. It still happened. We're at OneCon 25 at the beautiful Cosmopolitan Hotel. Not even close to the last one I did at the Lucky Cuss, which is over on Fremont Street. And, lots of chalk outline. I'm sorry, Lucky Cuss, I love you. But I got the chance here late in the day with the, they've got the happy hour going on. So there's all kinds of drinking and carousing and stuff going on behind the cameras. You're not going to get to see that unless people stumble into the set. But I got lucky, and I've got Rachel Park, who's the Senior Director of Product Marketing at SentinelOne, that came to join me for this last interview of the day,
Right.
which is really, really cool. So I was really happy to see that you were going to join me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's cool. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is identity management.
Right.
So you mentioned that earlier, and I was like, oh, identity management. Because I'm obsessed with identity management. I think it's one of the greatest threats we have.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge problem in the industry. And I think the addition of non-human agents to that, which becomes part of the identity management problem, is an even greater threat than Bert down in sales,
Right.
who has already been a threat.
Yeah.
But now I've got 50 bots that are also doing sales that I have no idea what they're going to do. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely spot on. We typically talk about threats in two ways. We talk about what are hackers going after, and that's usually the data conversation, and we'll talk about that. But at the end of the day, where does the threat really originate from? And it is, to your point, with the identity. And I think one thing that we have been very thoughtful about is looking at identity management much more holistically from a security perspective. And that's why we've been very intentional when we think about singularity endpoint and singularity identity and unifying that together, because you need to have the context of not only your identities and how they relate to different endpoints, but how those endpoints then can connect to access to different pieces of data as well. And so having that holistic view is super important for us here.
So, I mean, so let me go back to employees to start.
Right.
We'll stick with the humans for a minute.
Sure.
I used to do audits, and one of our first audit questions was, who works for you?
Right.
And I don't know, probably 99% of the time the answer was, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So how do I get, just starting with the humans, how do I get my hands around that? I mean, controlling what they're doing, who has access to what, in this modern problem. Because the modern problem is much bigger than what I was doing.
Yeah.
I could go to the mainframe and dump the user list
Right.
and go, here are all the users.
Right.
Show me which ones you don't know who they are, and let's figure that out. Today, I've got third-party vendors. I've got cloud-based people. I've got people I've never seen who work for me that I don't know if they're in North Korea or they're in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And how do I start to get a handle on that?
Yeah. I think, and I hate to be the person to always bring AI into the conversation, but it's something that we think quite deeply about. For us, it's two parts of the equation. There is a data access part of the equation, and then there is, okay, well, how do I actually access the data, query the data to get information on all of these different identities? And that's where AI comes in. We did a really cool demo and announcement today, actually, where we highlighted that with Purple AI, for example, you would be able to easily query native third-party logs, particularly if you were to have potentially a compromised identity alert. And you, in one simple click with Purple AI's auto investigations, Purple actually hypothesized that there might be a compromised identity, queries the Okta logs, taps into Singularity hyperautomation, slacks the user and says, hey, user, did you happen to actually log in from this random location? We can't really verify you. And can get the verification, can continue the investigation, and then in a single click, verify with Okta, Proofpoint, EDR, Zscaler, get all of the context, and then immediately take responsive action, mitigative action, including locking down, suspending the user in Okta, locking down access to different pieces of critical data in S3 buckets. It's really one example of a tool that can kind of jump in there.
So, and your product's called Purple AI, which
Yeah.
I had read about. And so that's almost an autonomous incident response process. Is that?
Yes. I would say it's autonomous across the entire SOC analyst workflow, from triage, where Purple will actually automatically look at every single alert, see how similar alerts have been dealt with, give you a verdict of a potential true positive, highlight the context of it in a summary, to actually, in a single click, begin investigating that alert, trying to validate and see if this is actually a true incident, to suggesting potential mitigative actions via Singularity hyperautomation, to even thinking proactively and saying, okay, we've identified the situation. Should we create a custom detection rule to identify any potential similar alerts and what we should do to mitigate that? And so from the very beginning to the very end, Purple AI can actually help you at every single stage of process.
I mean, that makes sense because that process, which I've outlined, not that process, but the old-fashioned process,
Right.
which was an analyst,
Right.
who is usually the newest employee,
Yeah.
sees Bert log in on a weird IP and then starts a process that with a flowchart.
Exactly.
So, but the AI can take that to the next level, right?
Yeah, I think we're going from a place right now, or rather, I would say right now we're at an inflection point where AI is so advanced that you're starting to see this paradigm shift of humans doing the work and they're getting assisted by AI for specific actions, to where we can go now, which is AI agentically doing that work for you as the human analyst, summarizing that work, suggesting pre-approved actions, and giving the analyst the full commander seat place to approve and guide AI to continue its work. And so that's just really unlocking a lot of scale.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody earlier about like injecting a kind of layer between the humans
Totally.
and this whole process because it seems like when I look at it today, the process is becoming so complex
Yeah.
because now I've got users logging in from all over the world,
Yeah.
connecting to a virtual switch on AWS or whatever, and they maybe have massive access, and I don't have a clue who that person really is, and I need somebody to start watching. So does that expand and start watching, say, like behaviors? Or it's just looking at I mean, you mentioned some things like, oh, it's a strange IP address.
Right.
But what if it's a normal IP address and it's the person's behavior that's weird because they immediately start trying to look at, say, like a good old Etsy shadow kind of a
Right.
thing. Yeah.
So I think one thing that's really incredible, that's something that we're very proud of at SentinelOne, is we've been doing this for a really long time. We've been working with AI and autonomous security for about a decade now. And what you just described is exactly part of the multi-layered autonomous system that we have established. So starting with behavioral and static AI detections, which we are constantly improving on, this is actually how we made our mark in the industry. And we have that within our Singularity endpoint, Singular Identity, cloud security protections. And then on top of that, you layer on our agentic AI capabilities, our automation capabilities. You actually have a multi-layered approach. And so for your example, absolutely, immediately our detections would catch on and say, behaviorally, something is quite different. It would create that alert, and then you can apply Purple AI on top of that and immediately begin investigating that alert, figuring out the mitigative action.
I mean, I think that starts to move towards solving some of that problem. Because
Right.
I just know from historically, I started when I literally was sitting at a terminal and I could see the names of every node
Yeah.
that connected. And I could literally just look out in the room and go, I don't know that guy. And I could walk in there and go, who are you?
Yeah.
Why are you logged in?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, I'm a new student in engineering and I just connected to the mainframe. And I'm like, oh, can I see your ID?
Yeah.
I got that. But today, that's not what we're dealing with. I mean, I have students I've never seen. I have students that are remote students, that are online students that I've never met. I have no idea who they are. They could be bots.
Yeah.
And that worries me a lot. The other thing I want to ask you about this a little bit was we've seen on the security side a rise in things like deep fakes and and seeing that exploit user identity. So for instance, I did one where essentially a fake voice called an employee and basically told them to turn the key on transferring a bunch of funds to that account number. And because it sounded like the CFO,
Right.
they did it
Right.
and they lost a bunch of money. And, my answer to them was, well, the money's gone. Let's just move. Let's just start there and say the money's gone. Now, what can we do to prevent this from happening
Right.
in the future? So Does this kind of start to encompass that as well? I mean,
Yeah, I think so. And there's two parts to it. The first part is you're absolutely seeing an increased adoption of AI powered threats from attackers. And we do talk about deepfakes. You're not seeing it at such a large scale degree right now. But I think in the broader sense, what we are seeing in recent research is the fact when you think about identity, to your point, we're now seeing examples like prompt block, malterminal, ransomware 3.0. We're seeing where LLMs themselves are generating new ransomware code in real time. And there's that example of ransomware 3.0, which is actually executing every single stage of an attack by itself. So it does the reconnaissance, does the payload creation, it does the ransom negotiation. And while it may not be as widespread, the fact that we've gone in less than a year from these early AI malware prototypes to actual credible demos of fully autonomous attack chains is highly concerning. I think it just begs the question of how do you respond at speed and scale to actually mitigate that type of threat? And then to your other point is you gave an example of you can see a person in the room. I think it's a question about data because now we're at this scale where data is probably your most critical piece to begin with in order to stay secure. And that's why bringing in Observo AI has been so critical for us because this is the tool that's inherently an AI SIM that allows you to immediately ingest clean data from every source. It applies AI and modeling so that it can really dedupe, address the redundancy in data, and also give you that context that's enriched data so that you're saving costs, you're saving time, you're saving money, and able to actually action on it. And so when you put all that together, from Observo AI thinking about the data to actually thinking of behavioral and static AI in terms of the detections on it, to applying purple AI on the agentic AI front, to hyperautomation, and then we can go into securing AI. It really is thinking about embedding AI across the entire flow.
yeah. And how do you think then that? So obviously we have all the good AIs,
Yep, we've got the good AI.
and all of you who know me know I talk about Neuromancer all the time, and you may not know what that is, but
Nope.
it's a really old book from like 1987 or 84, I think, that was basically about, it was very forward thinking. It was about people doing battle with AIs.
Gotcha.
So they literally had AIs to fight AI. So one of the things I see happening, and not yet, but I see it happening in the sense of when you get rogue AIs that you're introducing into your enterprise, how are we going to deal with those as well? Because these are more like agentic AI problems where now I've got all these non-humans I also need to identify, and I can't look out in the room and go, I know him.
Right.
I'm now like dealing with, I don't know who this is. It's
Yeah.
just some agentic AI, and we don't know how to know the good people from the bad people.
Totally. I think at this point, it's kind of a scary time, right? Because you have this exciting moment of agentic AI innovations on the good side. You are seeing the rise in AI threats from the attacker landscape. But at the same time, you're seeing businesses adopt AI at exponential rates. And employees are extremely excited, using like different models of different AI themselves. You don't know how they're using it. Developers may be using AI to code. There may be homegrown AI applications in the enterprise themselves. And so a big concern is how are you accurately monitoring? Are you mitigating it in real time? What can you possibly do? And I think that's really critical for where prompt AI comes in, because prompt security comes in, because it considers these critical use cases. So today we announced several new SKUs that particularly address that concern with prompt for employees. We have prompt for developers, an AI code assistant. We have prompt for AI, homegrown AI apps, as well as in early access, prompt for agentic AI. And the whole notion of it is in one seamless platform, you are able to, in real time, monitor employees' usage or developers' usage of AI, be able to mitigate any kind of prompt injection, data leakage. And that is so critical to protect your enterprise right now. I think right now for organizational leaders, it's about balancing both sides of that coin. So you're using AI for security, you are securing AI, and that's honestly for me what it means to be an enterprise in today's world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any way around it.
Totally.
I mean, and the introduction of ephemerals, things, and now we're going to have those, which just, oh, this popped up, solved a problem, went away, and I'd never seen again. All that just makes this almost an insurmountable problem for a traditional, plural sysop sitting in the server room going, who is that?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Rachel Part, for coming on and joining us at OneCon 25. I want you to be sure and check out all our content from OneCon 25. I'm Doug White for Security Weekly News. This interview is sponsored by SentinelOne. And if you want to see more about that, visit securityweekly.com/OneCon, and you can find out all the good info. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.